So, Holly, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your book and the journey that brought you to writing it. One of the themes that I just think is so beautiful and present in your story is trees. Maybe
Mhm.
we can start there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so trees have come to signal so much in my experience of grief. Humans obviously share the planet with trees. They provide us food and oxygen, and they allowed us to build shelters and build the boats that brought us together as a species. They also mirror the human lifespan. And I think in the um, sort of seasonal recession and renewal, they teach us something about life and death as well. So I talk in my book, there's a passage where I go to visit where my dad died. My dad died by suicide in 2020. And he died in a woodland. And I talk about visiting that and finding it to be undeniably lovely, and how that was both a comfort, knowing that he had that experience shortly before he died, and also an outrage, almost an obscenity to see this sort of beauty around me. And then I talk about later on in the book about going to Sydenham Hill Wood in South London and having just the most devastating panic attack of my life, being surrounded by trees. And I think it was taking on the knowledge that trees, whereas once provided some sort of comfort or connection to the natural world, that had altered forever with the experience of my dad. So the tree image, it has obvious analogies with family and tribe. We talk about the family tree. The family tree likely comes from the first piece of inheritable property, which was the fruit tree. Fruit trees take a long time to mature, so they had to be passed down in families. And so you get this interesting kind of connection with inheritance, what we inherit from our families, but also sort of the owning of nature, and whether that serves humans or not. There's tree folklore in sort of every tradition in the world, far too many to go into now, but I will talk briefly about the yew tree. So the yew tree, you might know, is associated with death because it grows in graveyards. Every part of it is poisonous. It was said to be the meeting places of witches, and if you fell asleep under a yew tree, you were said to have terrible dreams and then not wake up. But at the same time as having this association, the yew tree has this other association, which is one of renewal and rebirth. So the yew tree has this extraordinarily long lifespan, but when it does die, the hollow of the parent tree, it's called, the child tree grows up through the middle, and sort of lives off the rot of the parent tree. So in a very real way, it has this ability to reactivate itself and to be reborn and achieve this sort of immortality. And obviously, I'm talking here about a parent loss, losing my dad. And so this image of the sort of the child tree taking on the adult tree, it's something of a memorial, I suppose, that lives on in the child, that I find to be really beautiful. But I'll just talk about the title. I'll show you the book, actually. It's called The Bleeding Tree. The title of the book comes from a short story by James Hurst called The Scarlet Ibis, and that is all about trauma and synchronicity and inevitability and sort of blood bonds. But there are real bleeding trees in the world. There is a tree in Yemen called the dragon tree, and when you cut it open, it literally bleeds this red sap, and this sap was used to preserve corpses right up until the present day. There's lots of bleeding trees in folklore as well. So there's a story, sort of the Babylonian proto Romeo and Juliet, who are called Pyramus and Thisbe, and they both kill themselves thinking the other has died by suicide. And Thisbe slits her throat, and the gore splatters on the tree, the mulberry tree, and that's why we have the red fruit of the mulberry tree today. So there's all this association with sacrifice as well. But there is one more reason that my book is called The Bleeding Tree, and it's because my dad would say bloody and bleeding. These are words I'm going to always hear in my dad's voice, because he was a Northern English working class man. He was usually telling me off you know, you've kicked the bloody football into the bloody flower beds kind of thing. So I'll always hear that in my dad's voice. So in that way, the title of the book is also a private joke just for me, really.